And we are live, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you, Chief. My name is Jason Pro, Chairman of the Northborough Board of Selectmen, and I call to order this regular meeting on September 28, 2020. Before we begin the meeting, I have to go through some preliminary information. This is an open meeting of the Northborough Board of Selectmen being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order is posted at the top of our agenda and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Meetings being conducted by the Zoom application as posted on the town's website. The agenda notes the various ways that you can connect to the meeting. There's a YouTube live stream, cable access television government channels, Verizon 30 and Charter 192. There's a Zoom webinar link and also a audio phone call Zoom webinar link on the agenda. Please be mindful that this meeting is being recorded. You are visible. Please be aware that other folks can see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast will be recorded and available for replay. Ground rules of the meeting. As chair, I will walk through the agenda and introduce each presenter for each topic. After they conclude their remarks, I'll poll the members of the board to invite their comments, questions, or motions. Please hold comment until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a manner that helps us generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair. When we arrive at the public comment item on the agenda, I will offer the instructions for how that will be conducted. And finally, because this is a remote meeting, we are required to take each vote by roll call. That concluded. I'll now just check with the board members and staff members on the meeting here, just to verify connectivity. My name is Jason Perot, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Tim Kalin, Vice Chair.
Present.
Thank you. Leslie Rattan, Clerk.
Present.
Julianne Hirsch.
Present.
And Scott Rogers.
Also present.
Great. We also have staff members, Town Administrator John Coder.
Present.
We have Public Works Director Scott Charpentier.
I'm present.
We have Town Finance Director Jason Little.
Present.
We have Police Chief William Liver.
Present.
And we have Fire Chief David Parenti, who's also assisting with the technology and hosting aspects of this meeting. Chief?
I'm here.
Thank you, Chief. Also note that we have Kathy Dalglish of Northborough Cable Access also conducting some of the technology support for this meeting. And with that, I think we're prepared to begin. It's past the hour of 7 p.m. and we have Scott Charpentier, DPW Director, setting fees for the plowing, sanding of private ways for the upcoming 2020-2021 winter season. Leslie, yes.
Approval of minutes.
Thank you, Leslie. Let me step back for a moment. We have approval of minutes of the September 14th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion? Leslie.
I move that we approve the September 14th, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tim Kalin. Any discussion? Seeing none, it's a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Julianne,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. So the approval of minutes carries unanimously. Now we will segue over to the setting of plowing and sanding fees for private ways. Scott Charpentier, Director of Public Works, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We go through this every year. We have two public ways that the town of Northborough staff do snow removal as well as salt treatment. Those are Harris Ave and Maple Lane. As we've done in past years, we're proposing a minor increase, $5 per event per treatment. These are for roadway lengths that are less than 3,000 feet, which both Harris and Maple Lane are. Last year's fee was $205 per event. We're proposing a 2.5% or $5 increase to that. So it'll be $210 per event. Last year, we had 5 plow events and we had plow and salt events, and then we had 6 salt only events. As everybody knows, it was a very light winter last year. Fingers crossed we have another one, but that's our proposal this year, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, I'll just ask Scott, the residents on these private ways have been notified of this action?
Yep, they were notified of the meeting. They were notified of the proposed rate increase on September 14th via U.S. Postal Service, and we have not received any calls or emails or inquiries about the proposed increase.
Okay, thank you. And as noted, this is essentially covering the costs of performing the service.
It's keeping pace with the escalating costs of the service, yes.
Right, great, thank you. If there's no questions or comments from the board, do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move the board vote to set the fees for plowing and treatment of private ways less than 3,000 feet for the 2020-2021 winter season as follows: $210 per storm per private way for plowing, $210 per storm per private way for treatment.
Second.
Moved by Scott Rogers, seconded by Leslie Rattan. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Scott Charpentier. Appreciate it.
Chairman, thank you, board.
Next up is Rick Leaf of Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation to request transfer of available funds for completion of the affordable housing project by the NAHC and Habitat for Humanity for property located at 24 Hitching Post Lane. Do we have Rick?
Mr. Chair, I'm not showing any attendees in it all, so I don't know if this is related to our other issue with Microsoft. I'm looking right now to see if there's if I can figure out what's going on with it.
Okay. In the interim, shall we proceed with the agenda?
I would recommend you proceed with the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Chief. That brings us to reports. So Scott Rogers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to, I guess, start off by thanking all the residents that have been engaged in the activities and decision-making process in the town, whether the topics are celebrations, property development, sidewalks, dog parks. Just continue to encourage folks to watch the public meetings, ask questions, and offer constructive comments. Thank you to Chief Liver for providing the monthly police report. It's very sobering to see some of the situations that his team has to deal with, and I really appreciate their service. It's also very heartwarming to see the letters from the younger residents thanking them for celebrating birthdays throughout the summer. So that was great to see as well. Congratulations to our elementary schools for beginning on-site classes last week. and best wishes to Melican Middle School as they do their on-site work this week. Certainly appreciate the heroic efforts of educators and staff and families and students to persevere through the current epidemic. And then my final recommendation is that everyone continues to be mindful of their health and the health of others. And as part of that, I encourage you to get your annual flu shot if you're in a situation where you can. And that ends my report.
Thank you very much, Scott. Julianne Hirsch. Sorry, Julianne, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. So I serve as liaison to the Northborough Cultural Council, and they met recently and are working very hard on organizing their virtual Culture Fest, which will be broadcast November 6th, 7th, and 8th on NCAT. If anyone wishes to submit something for the program, the application can be found at nccculturefest.org. The theme is, appropriately for November, thankful for the arts, culture, and community. And their goal is to keep people connected and appreciating the arts in this time of COVID precautions. They were also very pleased with the survey results, where almost 200 people replied. And they will be starting their grant application soon. I also attended the Historic District Commission, which I am liaison to, and they met and they are starting to set goals consistent with the master plan. An interesting note is that the renovation of the Gale store was given an award by Preservation Massachusetts to the Gale Store project team. It is the Robert K. Kewen Jr. Project Award, which recognizes, and this is quotes, extraordinary projects that meld collaborative partnerships with creative and cutting edge ideas for the rehabilitation and active reuse of historic buildings. So congratulations to all those people who worked on the Gale General Store. Thirdly, White Cliffs. We met with the architects where the 3 uses were outlined in detail regarding cost. We went over the 3 uses, which were hospitality/event space, municipal use, and residential use. The outlay of money that would be required for any of these projects ranged from about $13 million to about $32 million. The budget and costs were daunting, obviously, so the architects agreed to come up with a more modified repair schedule to the building to try to bring the cost down. The next meeting is set for Wednesday, October 14th at 10:30 a.m., a little different than usual. And we will get more information at that meeting about this 4th option. And I'd like to also mention that all of these meetings can be accessed on YouTube, which is a great convenience now. And the last thing I want to bring up is a proposal to my fellow selectmen. I would like to add a standing item to our agendas that would be a discussion of items to be discussed at the next meeting. The reason I'm asking for this is a little bit in line with what Scott just mentioned about citizen participation. We have been receiving lots of emails about various neighborhood issues, and we have received lots of good public comments, ranging from traffic safety committee to problems on Bartlett Street. But it seems that those concerns are often not formally addressed. So I think emails and public comments that address any neighborhood questions or problems should be discussed publicly. It may be that we have no authority to do anything with said problem, but at least this could be clarified. So let me just restate my request. At the end of every meeting, we have an opportunity to talk about the next meeting's agenda items. It may be that there are no items coming forward, but I think this is a good way to address the communications that are coming to us along and also comply with open meeting laws.
Great. Thank you very much, Julianne. Is that
That's
Is
been
that-
the report.
the report? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to advise you, we got everything working. Attendees are all here now.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief. Leslie.
I attended the Mass Municipal Association webinar on September 15th, and it was a very good discussion about schools. The Desi was there and discussed a lot of things having to do with schools and COVID and so forth. And I thought it was interesting that they plan to make use of 3 weeks worth of data before they move to going remote if necessary. It's not just going to be one of these, they immediately close if somebody has it. So I don't know if things have changed since that meeting on the 15th, but that is what they stated at that point, that was going to be their best effort in trying to determine where to go if there were some issues at any of the schools that were had reopened. I wanted to also ask Chief Liver, if I could, how do you feel and what's our status with crosswalks and painting of crosswalks? Are we in pretty good shape in terms of how they're appearing to drivers these days before the winter hits? I wanted to kind of check in on that.
I know all of the, that's probably a better answer for Scott, to be honest with you, as far as the maintenance of the crosswalks.
Our pavement marking contractor was in town starting at the end of last week and working over the weekend, doing all the line striping and crosswalks, as well as the arrows and symbols. So I had actually reached out to him this afternoon to find out if he's complete yet. They work nights, so communication is usually about a day behind. But if they're not done now, they'll be done in the next day or two.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. That's great timing. Okay. Wanted to mention also that the Northborough Ed Foundation ran a pinwheel fundraiser very successfully, I might add. They were very good about getting the word out through all sorts of medium, and they really raised quite a bit of money for teachers and to hopefully meet the needs that they have as schools reopen. The pinwheels, as you may have noticed, are being displayed in front of the schools, which is a very nice and very welcoming appearance, I think, for the kids and the parents. But I do have a question now that I think about this, actually. Getting back to Chief Liver, if I might. Sorry to put you on the spot. I notice as I drive through town, kind of in the middle of the afternoon, that there's obviously when kids are being picked up, there are a lot of lines of cars sitting on the shoulders as they're headed into the school driveways and parking lots. And maybe I'm speaking rhetorically here. I don't know how that's really, I guess, going to change much, because I think because of COVID, there's probably a lot less carpooling. People are not driving their kids together with other kids. So I'm guessing that the lines are going to stay pretty long. And how do you view that situation in terms of passing traffic, especially on Route 20 by St. Bernadette's?
They need a bigger parking lot. It's a private school and their location is not good.
Right.
I've had conversation with the owner of what was Trombetta's. He's got some concerns there. We've been doing some increased traffic enforcement down there in the mornings and the afternoons. Most of the problems are people trying to accelerate on the right lane coming westbound at Bartlett Street, trying to beat the traffic that's in the left lane.
Yes.
And then they get to a bottleneck in front of his business, and there's a lot of squealing tires and brakes. But that's mostly in the morning, some in the afternoon. But everybody's in a hurry to go nowhere apparently, and it's just a matter of breaking out the citations and the dollar signs. So I don't know what to do about St. Bernadette's. We've had suggestions in the past about having them come off of Bartlett Street and exit onto Route 20, but for some reason that just doesn't seem to work for them. So yeah, they've also expressed concerns about vehicles driving past the school and some accidents that actually landed on the front lawn of the church or the school property. But again, that's just human driver behavior.
Yeah.
You can only modify that so much.
Yeah, it actually is pretty bad. I thought in the afternoon, I do see a lot of people, obviously they're going around to the right on the shoulder. People who are trying to take a left into St. Bernadette's are trying to pull as close to the double yellow as they can so that people can go around on the right. But a lot of people are driving very quickly, and I can see that bottleneck occurring. And I guess I do worry about that eventually causing a bad problem. I just don't know what to do about it. But I know you're all aware of it. I just wanted to mention it at this meeting.
I followed a vehicle on Bartlett Street that was speeding, and it went through the red light at Bartlett and 20 only to get stuck in traffic to turn left into St. Bernadette School.
Hmm.
You know, it's okay to be in a hurry if you pick up your student, but it's apparently, you know, that was not a pleasant conversation to have. So,
Yeah. I can imagine. Okay.
okay.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you. Also, I received a letter, and I don't really want to paraphrase it. It's not. I think it's such a nice letter. It's about a heroic act that someone experienced here in town. I received a letter from Chris Stern, who had written a letter about his father Gregory, who had been stung by a bee. And let's see, my father Gregory Stern was out cutting the lawn and all of a sudden was stung by 6 yellow jackets. He is allergic to bee venom and is anaphylactic. Once he realized he was stung, he ran over to the neighbors. He retrieved his EpiPen and went to look for glasses. The next thing he remembers was that he had fallen, and another neighbor, mom, had called her son to assist while she called 911. This son, by the name of Johnny Michi, I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name actually, Michison, administered the EpiPen 2 times to Gregory Stern. Thereafter, Johnny's friend Mike Cashel also read the directions, tried to figure out how to handle things quickly, and gave him some more of the EpiPen. Shortly after, the EMT arrived to take father to the hospital to be treated. He is so impressed. I know he's impressed with the way our EMTs handled that situation, and I can attest to that on a personal note because my own son had an anaphylactic attack and was carried out by a gurney and it was treated very, very well by our own fire department and EMTs. So I know they handled that very professionally, but I also think it's important to mention the names of these boys, Johnny Mischison and Mike Cashel, who jumped to help this individual. And it takes a lot of guts to do that, to administer something like that to someone. So I just wanted to make mention of that and draw attention to that particular situation and thank them for everything that they did. And Chief, please thank your department as well. I appreciate that. My final note is the Community Affairs Committee has arranged for a jack-o'-lantern stroll through Town Common. I believe it is October 30th through November 1st, but I would suggest checking the Facebook page for the Community Affairs Committee for the details on that. I think that's a wonderful idea on their part. I'm sure social distancing will be will take place as well. Everyone will wear masks, which I recommend to everybody anyway. But I think that's a great idea on their part to try and be creative throughout all of this. So that ends my report.
Thank you, Leslie. Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First thing, I just wanted to make people aware that early voting starts on October 17th. This is in-person early voting, October 17th through October 30th at the Senior Center, 119 Barefoot Road, if you're not aware of where it is. And then the in-person election voting is November 3rd, and that will take place at Milliken. So just make sure that you get out and vote. It's really important. We last Selectmen's meeting, we approved the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. We are actively looking for volunteers for that committee. There's on the town website, there's the application to serve on the committee. So please, if you're interested, take a few minutes, fill out an application that you can get in queue for the interview. There are also open seats on other boards and committees too. So if you're maybe not interested in Diversity and Inclusion Committee, if there's other committees or boards that you're interested in serving on, all those are listed on the website as well. So please take a few minutes to look over those. Always looking for good people to serve in those positions. Just want to congratulate everybody for Applefest. I wasn't unable to attend anything just out of concerns about the virus, but heard good things. Hopefully everybody had a good time. One thing to keep for people in town to keep their eyes on is the banners for Applefest will be coming down over the next month or so, and Boroughs Cares for Troops will be putting up banners for Northborough residents that have served in the armed forces. So that will be a nice way to recognize the service that Northborough residents have made to the country. Just wanted to mention that the state of Massachusetts came out with Halloween guidelines. You could just Google Massachusetts Halloween guidelines and just go to the link that's on the Massachusetts site. I don't think there's anything too surprising there. Straightforward, common sense type of things. But if you have any questions, you can look at that and see that there. And I just wanted to welcome the couple new hires that we've made, that John has made over the last few weeks, and welcome both those new people to the town. And I know for one that we're all excited that those positions have been filled. I don't think anybody's probably more happy to have those filled than Mr. John Cordair. So now we can actually have somebody else to commiserate with. That's it. That ends my report. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Tim. For my report, I just want to echo a few things that have already been mentioned. One is the Northborough Ed Foundation's Pinwheel program. Certainly a very good turnout from individuals and local businesses to provide the funding for that. And it's just excellent to see the pinwheels out in front of the K-8 schools. So certainly appreciate their effort and appreciate the efforts of the community to support that. I want to thank everybody who was responsible for doing their best to organize Applefest this year. Applefest committee, thank you. I want to also thank some of the participants who did their best to provide activities. I was able to take advantage of the American Legion Post 234's chicken barbecue and Tugas Farm apple picking, both very enjoyable. I also want to congratulate one more time Jeff Kelly of Sirloin Catering for being this year's Grand Marshal under difficult circumstances, and certainly a well-earned honor for his efforts to provide food services for some of the people afflicted with the complications arising from COVID. So thank you, Tim, for mentioning Hometown Heroes. Today, perhaps it's yesterday or observed today, last Sunday of September is Gold Star Mothers and Gold Star Families observance for families who have lost a service member in sacrifice to their country. So just want to make that acknowledgement. As Tim mentioned, BC Cares for Troops is putting together Hometown Heroes undertaking. You can go to their website, bc4t.org. If you'd like to provide a contribution, they can help offset the expenses for that program. I also want to mention local attorney and former selectman Aaron Hutchins. Some time back, he had emailed me to make a suggestion that the town support Hometown Heroes. He had seen it done in one of the surrounding communities and made me aware of that. As it happens, independently, BC4T came forward this year with the plans to proceed ahead with that, but Aaron had at that time offered to lead some of that effort. That had slipped my mind more recently. So I just want to make that acknowledgement to him for also having been supportive of taking on this program. And I believe that is it for my report for tonight. John Cordair, Town Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. I just want to follow up on Selectman Kalen's comment about the Department of Public Health's guidelines on Halloween. We'll have those up linked through our homepage. We were trying to get that up today. Those guidelines just came out at the end of last week. They largely mirror the CDC's guidelines. And again, as was stated, it's a lot of common sense. But the bottom line is if you don't feel comfortable either participating, handing out candy or trick-or-treating door to door due to your personal health concerns, then you shouldn't do that. But in any event, we'll have those guidelines up on the website tomorrow, so folks can easily click on them if they wish to. The other thing is I want to mention, Tim mentioned again some of our hires. I'm very pleased that we have Kristen Black with us now as the new health agent. She will be effective starting on October 13th. So Kristen is currently the health agent in Uxbridge. She has a PhD from Penn State and has amazing references. And we are very excited to have Kristen starting in Northborough in the next couple of weeks. Lastly, I want to make the board aware, be announcing tomorrow a change in the town hall hours. When the COVID-19 pandemic began, we moved to a 8 to 4 schedule Monday through Friday, and largely Friday was remote for most of the staff. And then we were alternating between A and B groups, again, to minimize potential cross-contamination should someone get sick. As we progress through, again, we're all still being careful. We are social distancing, but the staff had let me know that we were getting requests from folks who would like to see us back to our regular hours. And our regular hours are Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 to 4, Tuesday, 8 to 7 p.m., and Friday, 7 a.m. to 12 noon. Now, that schedule allows folks to be able to get to us after hours on Tuesdays and after hours Tuesdays, typically after most people are done working, and before work on Friday. So it won't change things. The building is still not open to the public just yet. We do have limited in-person meeting hours where we have appropriate space set aside in the gym if people need to come in and have face-to-face meetings with any staff. But we want to get back. We're trying to slowly move back to what will be probably a considerable holding pattern until our buildings are open again fully to the public. But again, the request was made, can we get back to our normal hours? And Friday is no longer this all remote day. So our normal hours are going to be put back into place, effective again October 12th. And staff will be here, at least some staff will be in every office during the hours that we're open. And of course, we'll still have certain situations where at times individuals will be working remotely, and we're still trying to keep staff appropriately social distance and separated. So, but in any event, the hours will go back to the hours that we've held for the last 20 years or so. And so we'll post that on the door, and we'll get that put out through the website and town news. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'll now return to our scheduled agenda item. Rick Leaf, Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation, request to transfer available funds for completion of the affordable housing project by NHC and Habitat for Humanity for property located at 24 Hitching Post Lane. And if I can find my cursor.
Mr. Chair, we have 3 people that we need to promote for this. Kathy Jubert's on phone, Rick is there, and Debbie is there as well.
Oh, yes, I see. Yep. Okay. And Kathy. Rick, are you on?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Very good. Yes, we can.
Okay.
Kathy Jubert. Kathy, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. Got it.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Debbie.
Yes, I'm here as well. Thank you for having me.
And can you pronounce your name for us, Debbie, please?
Yes, it's Debbie Maruka Hoke, and I'm with Habitat for Humanity.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. Rick, I think I'm going to turn it over to you and let you outline what this is about.
Pleased to do that. First of all, thank you very much for allowing us to come before you tonight and make this presentation for this project we think is a worthwhile project for affordable housing in town. Before I start, I just want to bring you guys up to date on something very meaningful that's happening here through Preservation Massachusetts. You're probably aware that Norm Corbin is very much involved in town and historic preservation, both in his role on the Historic District Commission and being a member of the Northborough Historic Society. He was made aware earlier this year that Historic Massachusetts, Preservation Massachusetts, was offering different awards in different categories of historic preservation. And there was one in particular he thought was very appropriate for the project that we completed on Main Street. The two houses on Main Street, one of which is the Gale General Store, which was funded 50% through community preservation funding. And the award that we were looking at was something called the Robert K. Keene Award, recognizing extraordinary projects that meld collaborative partnerships with creative and cutting edge ideas for the rehabilitation and active reuse of historic buildings. Norm got the application materials from Preservation Massachusetts a number of months ago, and Norman, Debbie, and I worked together to fill those out and submit them. And we're happy to report that that project did win the Robert Kuhn Award for cutting edge ideas for rehabilitation and active reuse of historic buildings. And we thought that the collaboration part was extremely apropos for what we did, given the fact that Trinity Church made the two houses available to us at a very attractive price. And members of the church were active volunteers in the rehabilitation project. Obviously, Habitat for Humanity did the yeoman's work in the project. The town was very instrumental, providing 50% of the funding for the project through community preservation. A lot of the work was done by students from Essemet Valley Regional Technical High School with their faculty. And we had students from Algonquin Regional working on the project also. So this project really fit in a lot of different categories. And when Preservation Massachusetts read our application, they were just blown away by what we did, how we preserved the Gale store, and all of the collaboration of different groups working together. So once again, we're very proud to let you know that we did receive that award. Typically, in non-COVID times, Preservation Massachusetts would have a big dinner downtown in Boston to recognize all the award winners. Instead, during the month of October, there's going to be a lot of social media information put out. Debbie and I recorded a little acceptance speech for the award, which is going to be out there. And there'll be other types of recognition. So as we know more about that, we'll work through Kathy to let you guys know about that. But we're very proud that we were able to receive that award. And it's quite a feather in the cap of the town of Northborough, also to preserve that store. So I just want to let you know about that before we get into this project.
Well,
And
thank
once
you, Rick.
again,
I appreciate
thank you all very much for supporting that and providing the funding that made that possible.
Well, thank you very much for bringing that up. We certainly, it certainly was an excellent project all the way around with the collaboration of the many groups to bring that to fruition, and to receive this kind of award for it is certainly an appropriate acknowledgement of all the work that went into doing it. So thank you, and thank Habitat for Humanity, and thank Trinity Church, plus all the contributors in that project for getting us to that point.
Okay, so let's move on to the application we have before you tonight. The background is that 24 Hitching Post Lane is a condominium that was built as a part of a Chapter 40B project where 24 condominiums were created, 4 of which were offered as affordable units when the project was completed. And NEHC became aware in 2008 that 2 of the affordable units, number 15 and number 24, had been refinanced multiple times in violation of the affordability restrictions in the deeds. Eventually, the owners of the 2 condominiums couldn't afford the payments anymore. They abandoned the properties and left the banks holding them. The banks made an effort to foreclose the property, which we were aware of in working through Kathy and DHCD. We made the state aware of that, and DHCD stepped in and told the 2 banks that they could not do a normal foreclosure on those properties because of the affordability restrictions in the deeds. But in fact, if the banks wanted to offer those properties for sale through lottery to qualified low-income families, they could do that, or they could work with a partner to make that happen. And NAHC raised their hand and said, we'd be more than willing to be a partner in that. For the longest time, neither bank showed an interest in doing that. But earlier this year, the bank who owns 24 Hitching Post Lane agreed to donate that property to Habitat for Humanity. Once they did that, members of Habitat went in there, took a look at the property, did an estimate of what the work would be to rehabilitate the property, and then met with our board of Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation, went through the project. We felt it was a worthwhile project to do. We agreed to find the final budget number, which is $138,000 worth of labor, materials, as well as a contingency to do the work. And then at that point, the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation board voted to fund $25,000 of that project with Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation funds. We also decided that we would present to the Community Preservation Commission a proposal to have the town also provide community preservation funding to the project. And we met with the CPC 2 weeks ago, and they proposed providing $50,000 worth of community preservation money towards the project. I think you have another attachment that kind of details money that's been reserved over time through town meetings for Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation use for affordable housing projects. And going into that meeting with the CPC, there's $500,000 that has been reserved over a number of years. And that was a combination of $50,000 left from a $500,000 grant that was done in 2015. As a matter of fact, that $500,000 grant in 2015 funded the money for the project at the Gale General Store on Main Street. But $50,000 remained. And then we worked with the CPC to try and build that reserve back up to $500,000 through subsequent town meetings. Other warrant articles were approved that eventually built that $50,000 back up to $500,000. When we met with the CPC, they felt the best way to do this was to take the $50,000 that remained from the 2015 grant and apply that to this project. And so what you have before you tonight is a request to take that $50,000 that remains from the 2015 approval at town meeting and devote that towards this Habitat for Humanity project. And what I'd like to do at this point is turn it over to Debbie, and she can explain to you in a little more detail what Habitat found at that property and kind of work that needs to be done. So Debbie, why don't you spend a few minutes on that?
Sure. Thank you very much, Rick. So when our construction crew went in to view the property, it had been, as Rick mentioned, abandoned for a number of years. Apparently there had been some pipes that had burst at one point in time. So there had been a number of holes punched into the walls to decrease the chance of mold growing in the walls. So there's a number of places where the drywall has holes in it and all needs to be repaired. So that part we knew going in. There were a few surprises that we found that we weren't expecting when we got there, which was there had been a leak through the roof, which had damaged, we were intending to remove the carpeting and replace with flooring, but the subfloor was also damaged from the water. So that all needed to be pulled up and replaced. And then as well, there's insect damage in the basement. So there was some wall reframing that needs to happen there. And the well pump for the unit had stopped functioning. So that needed to be replaced as well in order to get running water into the unit. The other things that we would do on any typical renovation of this age are, kitchen and bathrooms will be completely gutted and replaced so that there are new appliances, new fixtures, new toilets, etc., to freshen it up. And as I said, with all of the holes in the drywall, there will be patching throughout and fresh coat of paint throughout the entire unit. And then also all of the electric fixtures, all the lighting, switches, receptacles, etc., will be taken out, and all of that will be replaced as well. It does need a couple of appliances. It'll need a new stove. It needs a dishwasher and a hot water heater. None of those things are functional. So all of that will be going on there as well. The unique part about this particular project is that the condominium is not open to volunteer labor the way most of Habitat's projects are. So we had, a fantastic collaboration of volunteers at the Gale General Store project, and we were able to bring in a lot of folks from the community to help us get that work done. There is very, very limited parking in the condominium space, and there's limits on the things that are allowed to be outside. So they did express that they are not open to the concept of having volunteers eating lunch outside, for instance, which is one of the things that we're doing to help ensure that we've got social distancing and we're keeping any volunteers who are out on site safe. So, we're having everybody, who are taking breaks, eating lunch outside. And we're also not allowed to have dumpsters outside. So we need to have trucks there to truck things away. And we also are not allowed to put signage. So we can't put signage out to advertise the sponsors, which is another one of the typical features of a Habitat project. We do like to engage the entire community and then celebrate that engagement. So the entire project is a little bit unique for Habitat. It's got a couple of hurdles, but we're still moving forward with it. And we have been working with a very restricted number of volunteers, only 1 or 2 volunteers with a staff person at a time there. And mostly the work is being done by Habitat staff in a much more low-key manner than is typical for Habitat. But it's, I believe, it's a worthwhile project. We want to get this unit that has been sitting vacant for so long back into use as an affordable home. And it's a great little location. But the condominiums down there are it's very nice. It's a wooded lot all behind, and I think it'll be a fantastic location for a family to move into.
Great. Thank you very much, Debbie.
So that's kind of the overall. Once again, we're before you because as this future money was granted at town meetings, the process is that we need to go before the CPC to get their approval, and then we need to go before the Board of Selectmen for final approval to have the funds dispersed. So that's why we're before you tonight. If in fact you do approve this, the next step would be to create a funding agreement, which John and I are very comfortable in working together to do. Every project we've done for NAHC has had a funding agreement which outlines responsibilities of all parties in the project and gives a attached budget to the town accountant. No money is dispersed in advance. What happens is as invoices come due or if invoices are paid and reimbursements are needed, Habitat gives the invoices to me. I check them against the budget. I send them to the accountant. He double checks them against the budget. And when he's satisfied, he disperses the money back to NEHC. And then we cut a check back to Habitat for final reimbursement of the invoices. So no money would be dispersed in advance. And Jason and I and John and Kathy are pretty comfortable working through this process now. We've done it a number of times.
Thank you, Rick. John, you have something to add?
Yeah, just in your packet is a copy of the agreement from the Gale Store project from 2018. As Rick said, no money, all the money is held by the town until it's expended and we reimburse. This is a level of comfort that town accountant, myself, and the board has come to. Very good working relationship with Habitat and obviously Northport Affordable Housing Corp. So if the project is approved by the board tonight to release the funds, in your motion, I'd ask that you allow me to execute an agreement, a funding agreement like we've done in the past with the parties of interest. And that'll allow us to proceed, set up the budget, set up the accounts necessary so that they can proceed. But as Rick said, very comfortable. This is a process we ironed out years ago, and frankly, it's worked very well for all parties.
Great. Thank you, John. And this has been before we do have the approval of the Community Preservation Committee already, right?
Correct.
So this is just kind of the final step to move forward with the project. Members of the board, any questions or comments? Leslie?
I just want to thank Rick for presenting this. I think this is, I think the more of this, the merrier. And I think that's a nice spot. I'm glad that this particular unit is being worked on and will become available. So
thank you, Leslie.
Very much. to Debbie as well, and Kathy, and you and Rick for working on this, and John.
Great. Yeah, I just add that we do have a kind of an established track record now of how these projects are financed, approved, conducted. Certainly a very successful project with Habitat for Humanity on the prior effort. And although the circumstances in terms of volunteer work will be different here, certainly I imagine the expertise and capability will make this one a successful project as well. If there are no other comments, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to approve the release of $50,000 to the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation to offset renovation expenses of property located at 24 Hitching Post Lane pursuant to Article 57 of the 2015 Annual Town Meeting.
Second.
Just to clarify, did we also want to add a clause to authorize the town administrator to execute the funding agreement? Which is not in the draft motion that we have.
So amended. Can I do that?
Yes, in his comments, John had mentioned also making the authorization for him to proceed with the funding agreement execution between the town, Habitat for Humanity, and Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation. So having said that, can I take it that the presented motion will incorporate that authorization to the town administrator? Tim, it was your motion.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, yes.
Do I have a second for the motion as amended?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Scott Rogers.
Aye. Excuse me, aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
Leslie Rattan.
Aye.
Tim Kalin.
Aye.
And I also vote aye, so it's approved unanimously. Rick, Debbie, and Kathy, appreciate all your effort here and look forward to seeing the project move forward.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your support as always. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let's see. Very good. Takes care of that item on the agenda, and that brings us back to public comments. So let me just preface the public comment segment of our show. This is an opportunity for the public to offer comment to the board. Because none of the topics are presented as agenda items, the board will not typically engage or deliberate or come to any decisions or commitments. You're welcome to present your viewpoints. If there are relatively simple questions that town staff can answer readily, we will certainly try to do our best in that regard. You'll have, when recognized, 3 minutes to proceed. I'm going to ask, just give me a moment here. If you would like to offer a public comment, if you're connected through the Zoom application, you can raise your hand. If you're calling by phone, and I just see one phone number in there, I believe you can press *9 in order to raise your hand. So I see 3 hands raised. I think they come up in the order. And so we'll begin with the writer's loft. We would ask people, if they're connecting through Zoom, to please put in an identifying name for the benefit of us so that we know who we're talking to. When I connect you, we will ask you to first please state your name and address, and then having done that, you can proceed. So Writer's Loft, you're first one in. And can you hear us?
Yep, hi, sorry. This is Kristen Rickstead at 2 Stirrup Brook Lane. I signed in with the wrong Zoom account, I guess. So, and I will pay attention to that for future reference.
Okay, sure.
I had two questions. The first one is, you brought up, you're taking down the Apple Fest banners and putting up some kind
Hometown
of
Heroes.
military families. What is
Yes,
it?
that's Hometown Heroes is the program. It's run in some of the surrounding communities, and we're essentially following suit here in Northborough to provide that acknowledgement and recognition.
So would you put the names of the local heroes on new banners? Is that what?
So if you go to the bc4t.org website, you'll see an example of a banner which features Brian Arsenal.
Yeah.
So it features a photo, the name. I think it identifies the service group the person was with.
Right.
bc4t.org would have most of the information to provide about what to expect with that.
Okay, that's great. Because I was actually on the naming committee a few years ago with Leslie Rutan for the high school, and we were working on a project where we were trying to get recognition for Brian in particular.
I see what
At the
you're saying.
high
Yep.
school. So yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so that brought that up because my husband is a military veteran. So okay, and my other question is for more of a statement. I would like you to put restarting the Northborough Citizens Advisory Board on your agenda for one of your upcoming meetings. Because it's in the town charter and we don't have one.
Okay, we'll have to review what the definition of that is. I know we have some number of committees that are in the charter, or I don't think it's the charter exactly, it's the administrative code, which is a separate thing. But we have some number of those that have been dormant or are dormant, and
yeah, this is one of those.
It'll take,
yeah.
Well, we would have to look into it to see what the definition is and whether it's still suitable for today's
I think it is
circumstances.
suitable. It's something that you would have to put together with the planning board, according to the information I have from the charter. So I'm happy to email it to you, but I'm sure you have access to
I
it.
think we have access to the town code. We can review that
Yeah.
and see what how that fits in with the current slate of committees we
So maybe you could put that on the agenda to talk about, though, huh?
We'll consider putting it on the agenda. Yes.
Super. Thank you. All right,
Yep,
that's
thank
it.
you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And next up, I have Burnswig family. Please state your name and address when I connect you. Chief, I'm going to ask for your assistance. I did promote to panelist. I have a pop-up that says Burnswig family is using an older version of Zoom, and they would need to be promoted to panelist to talk.
It's up to you. I can promote them if you'd like to, but
I'm fine to promote them, so I'll do that. It's just a different mechanism here.
Yeah, it's Zoom keeps coming out with updates constantly if they haven't updated.
Yep. So here you are. State your name and address, please. I'm sorry, you're muted.
Okay, I think we're here.
There you are. Yep.
Great. Michael Burnswig, 4 Jenkins Drive here in Northborough. Lived here with my family for 15 years. We built in the Stirrup Brook Estates. And I have a business in the local community, and really just wanted to highlight for the board the fact that the residents of the community, as I'm sure many are aware, are adamantly opposed to the Cable Matters project at 1 Lyman Street and the Gutierrez Company project at 0 Bartlett Street. I'm sure that everyone's seen hundreds of signs, ugly yellow signs all around town that residents have put up to express their concerns and also direct people to the savebartlett.org website. Also, there are nearly 1,500 members of the community that have signed a petition to express their concerns. And really, I just wanted to share some resident comments in their own words so that people.
Sure. Mr. Brunswick, I just want to remind you, it's a 3-minute limit here. So
understood. That's fine. I'll stick
just
to it.
Just so you're aware. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
just felt it was important for, people that haven't been to the petition to understand some of the comments. Resident Terry Yu indicated the traffic is already terrible on Bartlett Street, and to get to Algonquin High School, just simply dangerous. I live on Maple Street, where the 18-wheel semi-tractor trailers ignore the no trucks allowed sign. Day and night, they come through rumbling past my house, most certainly above the speed limit. Calls and emails to the DPW and police, including requests for traffic control, have not helped. Lisa M. stated that not only does the development of distribution centers adversely affect the Bartlett and Jenkins and Sturtbrook neighborhoods, but it also includes the Ridge Road and Maple Street neighborhoods. In addition to residents' loss of quiet and enjoyment, the wildlife that will be displaced or homeless with the food sources diminished or gone. Wetlands protection was created for a reason. Waivers, filing in, and bare minimum protection should be cause for alarm. What are we leaving for future generations? And I'll just share a couple more comments because I think it's important for everybody to hear in people's words. Susan M. stated, apparently taking for granted the state and town officials, like those on the Conservation Commission, will do what's required of them and right in these situations is also a dumb idea. Marcia H. said the number of trucks are already rolling through town. The heart of our town is obscene and changes the character of our town. And a final comment or two. Stephanie C. said clear babbling streams, lush green woods, animals and birds living freely, peace and tranquility, all will be gone if these projects succeed. So I just wanted to be sure that people are aware of the large public concern over these developments, which encroach on a lot of residential neighborhoods, our schools, the Sturtbrook Trail, and a lot of beautiful reasons that people have chosen to live in this community and to be part of the community. And I just want to be sure that the residents are, their concerns are listened to and taken up in terms of concerns with the different boards that are involved, and not really pointing towards this board, but I just want everyone to understand that it's, supported and that we just want voices heard, and that's really all. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm not sure I can.
I took care of it for you.
You got it. Thank you very much, Chief. Next up, we have Ruth Reeve.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, could you name and address, please?
I am Ruth Reeve and I live at 18 Juniper Brook Road in Northborough. I have a number of concerns regarding development at 0 Barrett Street. Firstly, I cannot express enough my disappointment in the conflict of interest issue that has arisen between the lawyer Mark Donoghue for the Gutierrez Development Company and the various boards of the town of Northborough he sits on. This clearly seems like a breach of the conflict of interest.
Ms. Reeve,
yeah.
I am a little concerned about insinuations being made about anyone serving on a town committee or acting in a capacity like that. You're free to express, you're free to hold those opinions, but I'm concerned that any insinuations made when the person who is the target of those insinuations is not present to defend themselves is probably not appropriate in this venue.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm just, I wait with interest a response about demystifying the conflict of interest issue, because I don't understand how someone, someone who's works in the school district. I've had to do the conflict of interest training. And I mean, as a cafeteria worker, it's kind of like, well, am I really going to slip someone an extra sandwich? And it's kind of a bit not irrelevant to me, but I understand. But this position and everything seems at the heart of the matter of conflict of interest. So I'd be really interested at some point if a very clear explanation could go out and explain to people how this isn't a conflict of interest, because it seems to me it directly is. But anyway, I will move on to other points. That's fine.
Sure.
So secondly, the negative impact this massive development is going to have on the local community is immeasurable. The light pollution and damage to the established wildlife is catastrophic. The building size seems massively out of proportion and will be a giant eyesore sticking out like a sore thumb. Barrett Street used to be beautiful to drive along, with woods either side of the road. It's now turned into the distribution center of Metro West. There are empty buildings that have never been occupied, sat there looking ugly and using up the natural resources of the area. The wildlife, such as coyotes, fisher cats, raccoons, deer, possums, foxes, and a multitude of rodents and insects, along with the various flora, are displaced again as they're squeezed into an ever smaller parcel of land. As we interact with them, with the inevitable negative consequences, it will be the deer and coyotes, etc., that pay the price. To allow the wetlands to be damaged and affected like this is just tragic. The Stirrup Brook Trail will no longer have the same hiking appeal as it will abut the distribution centre, which is not an attractive proposition. Thirdly, the thought of more trucks rumbling up and down Barrett Street, going into Lyman Street, yes, I know they're not supposed to, but we all know they do, is very scary. The number of high school drivers or parents trying to pull out onto Barrett Street daily is significant. Very often the young drivers are inexperienced and easily distracted, and in that respect, vulnerable. Having large trucks thundering around that corner past the high school entrance seems particularly ill-advised and an accident in the making. Finally, I would say, as history judges the town of Northborough, I find it unbelievable that anybody would put up their hand and say, yes, I was partially responsible for this horrible, misplaced, mismatched blot on the landscape. It's a legacy. If the legacy is allowed to endure, my respect for the town administrators will diminish. Why, oh, why would we have such a horrible site in what has been an area of such natural beauty? Please don't let money do the talking. Think of the well-being of the town and its inhabitants. I thank you for listening, and I hope you'll understand the points I'm making.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Reeve.
Thank you.
Next up, I have John Wickstead. And could you please state your name and address?
Hi, John Wickstead from 2 Stirrup Brook Lane. Can you hear me?
Proceed, please. Yeah.
I just want to start by, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
I just want to start by applauding the board for their efforts on behalf of recognizing veterans within our community. Thank you.
Well, I wish we could take it credit for doing so, but it primarily is the efforts of Boroughs Cares for Troops. So certainly happy to support that effort, but that's where the credit lies with that organization.
Nonetheless, we appreciate your efforts. Thank you. Second, I would take advantage of the chief of police being present for this meeting just to ask him, referencing his previous comments regarding problems with traffic, St. Bernadette School, Lyman Street, Bartlett Street, and Main Street. This is already a traffic congested area. We already have problems with traffic in this area. We have 3 schools within about half a mile of this area, and we are opening 140 new high bay truck depots at the top of the hill. This is not really a question of whether or not they should be developed. They're already developed, and we're about to open 140 new 18-wheeler bays at the end of Bartlett Street, which will continue to use Bartlett Street whenever it's convenient to get to Route 20. And I would like to hear what the chief has to say about the viability of opening an additional 40 bays at the new development.
Clearly, increased traffic anywhere is a concern for public traffic. And it's not just Bartlett Street or that area. We have traffic congestion all through town. And we have just as many complaints on every other areas of town regarding traffic flow. people that live on Whitney Street complain about traffic that goes down there, and there's a truck exclusion. We sit down there all day and barely ever catch a truck, but it's constant. So I'm told. When we do get calls, we go. There is no truck exclusion on Bartlett Street from Route 20 or through to Marlboro. There's the only thing that we have enforcement on would be trucking violations or speed enforcement. I can't impose any other sort of enforcement down there other than what's already allowed by statute. And other than that, we don't have, some folks have mentioned Ridge Road. There's in Maple Street, there's a truck exclusion on Ridge. And very rarely do we ever get a call about a truck on Ridge. I did get one just a couple of weeks ago from the town administrator who had a videotape of the truck, and we took action on that one.
That was on Maple, not Ridge.
Maple, I'm sorry. Okay, so it was, people in town are aware of it, and we're looking for it. The bigger concern that I have really doesn't impact Northborough that much is the condition and the width of Cedar Hill in Marlboro leading out to Bartlett Street, but there's nothing I can do about what the city of Marlboro wants to do with their roads.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Wickstead, you still have about a minute left.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your comments, Chief, and thank you for doing your best to keep our town safe. It's hard to ignore the fact that we're going to have 140 bays at the end of Bartlett Street. These distribution centers are sold as warehouses, and then they rapidly turn into distribution centers. And I would point out that the traffic reports submitted by the Gutierrez Company clearly underestimate the amount of traffic that's there because they use warehousing as their basis for these traffic reports. And if you look at these traffic reports and you change their estimations from warehousing to high bay distribution center, the traffic density can increase sixfold. This is not really anything other than objective looking at their own traffic reports. And I would suggest that the chief take a look at those traffic reports and see whether or not he thinks they're actually viable estimations of the traffic that we're likely to see from these 140 bays.
My only response to that is that would be, in my opinion, that's more of an engineering count and a traffic management study response. I'm law enforcement, not a traffic engineer.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wickstead. And I have one more. This is a phone caller, number ending 376. I'm going to bring you in. Please state your name and address first. Hello, caller. Can you unmute?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Name and address, please.
Yes. My name is Manny Lopes. I live at 96 Bartlett Street. So as you can tell by all the others, I'm going to be expressing my own concerns too on the development in the industrial zone. First, I've lived in this town since I moved here to work at Raytheon back in 1981. And the development down there has mushroomed in recent years to the point that the truck traffic, even now, without consideration of any additional distribution centers being put up or being utilized that are already built, as people noted, there's already a huge number of bays that aren't even being utilized yet with traffic. So who knows what that's going to bring. But I live on the street, and getting in and out of my driveway is a safety issue. I can only imagine the same for every child or any person who works at the school or coming out of Maple Street, Stirrup Brook, or Lyman, or anywhere else is a risk. The street has hill spots where you come out. I know where my driveway is, that's the case. And these trucks, they don't crawl down the street. They move at a pretty good speed. They can't stop fast. These are 18-wheelers. And so I consider, as a resident who has to pull in and out of my driveway, to be a real serious safety issue for me and every other resident who is unfortunate to live in proximity to this traffic that's being generated by the industrial park. So I do feel that it's a serious risk to safety. And, so I think that we need to do something to stop even the traffic we have now, much less allow any additional traffic to enter down through a residential area. The people who live here should not bear the burden of having an industrial park to add expanded tax base to the town and be the ones that has to suffer the safety and the noise, the pollution, the wildlife and the wetland destruction rather, that's going to incur as a result of this. The other thing is I have a 220-year-old house. I happen to have the Revolutionary Captain Joel Bartlett's mill house here, and it was built close to the road. I'm losing my lath and horsehair plaster ceiling from the vibration that I get from these trucks traversing up and down the roads. And every time it gets worse because the road condition gets worse because of the weight of these vehicles, and the vibration gets worse. And I can only imagine some of the other residents on the street are probably having similar problems. Environmentally, I mean, I think a number of the other people have already noted the intrusion into the wetlands and the wildlife here. I'm seeing, because I'm on the ponds on my backside and I have an aqueduct, so I'm seeing lots of wildlife that I have not seen in years past, from packs of coyotes to foxes and a lot more deer and other animals that are being moved out of their habitat. And they're moving into the residential areas where people who had small pets like cats and even children with coyotes are now being put at risk because they're being moved out of their habitat. And so I think that's something that we need to consider. And I don't know if environmental assessments and studies have been done, but it's something that I really think we need to consider relative to that area. The other thing, someone else had made
sir,
a note on.
I'm sorry, you're already over time, and I do have another caller that I need to take.
Okay. Can I make one comment on the exclusion zone that was noted by the chief, though, please?
If you can make it in 15 seconds, sir, yes. We do need to move on.
I'd like to see if we can pursue an exclusion for commercial vehicles over 10 tons for the traffic we got now, and see if we can't force those trucks to route through Hayes Memorial and Cedar Hill and not go through residential areas.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a caller, only a first name shown, Janine. I'm going to bring you in. Please state your name and address. Hello, Janine.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Janine Callahan, 6 Stirrup Lane. I don't need to take a ton of time. I don't need to rehash what all of my close neighbors have been saying, but to reiterate our concerns with 1 Lyman and 0 Bartlett. I believe I sent each of the board members an email expressing my concerns. Again, I don't need to rehash it. You all have what I said in writing. I also included in the email the petition that was signed by 1,200 people of Northborough and Southborough. We included Southborough because their kids, they go to Algonquin. I also included the website that we created, and which will, again, reiterate our concerns and break it down. There's a lot of information. Only having 3 minutes isn't quite enough time for each of us to express our concerns. So if you can, please look at the information that was sent to you, the website, the Facebook page, the petition. It's all clearly noted as to what our concerns are. And we just want to have a voice. We want to make sure everybody in the town and all the town departments realize that the residents are having a tough time with this, and we would appreciate you listening to our voices, and hopefully something positive comes out of all of these voices as we speak and voice our concerns.
Very good. Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else connected to the Zoom meeting who would like to comment? Very good. Thank you all. We do appreciate your comments. We do understand the circumstances. I just want to perhaps be clear that under state law, you have different boards and committees who are empowered with different kinds of authority. You have the Board of Selectmen, you have the Planning Board, and you have your school committees. Those are the predominant areas that have elected representation. And they each have their own jurisdiction. And it's not the case, which people may be under the misimpression, it's not the case that every other board and committee in town is subordinate to the Board of Selectmen. So I just want to set the right expectation here. What we have going on Bartlett Street is essentially a land use and zoning issue And it is the jurisdiction of the planning board and possibly the zoning board of appeals, depending on what kind of application is coming forward, to try to make the determinations that are appropriate with state law, with our bylaws, and with the zoning that is in effect, and whatever the allowed uses are for those. There's been some commentary about the green space up in that area on Bartlett Street, and just want to emphasize that this is not town land. This isn't something we're granting someone to do. This is privately owned land, and the owners of that land have certain property rights that go along with that. And so that's not to say board members, are unsympathetic with what's going on. They may be very sympathetic with what's going on, but it isn't necessarily the authority of the Board of Selectmen to intervene in what's essentially the jurisdiction of another elected board in town. So we certainly appreciate the comments. We understand the concerns. At the moment, this is a process that's conducted through the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals, and that's where the predominant amount of decision-making will take place on these issues. So again, we appreciate the public comments, understand the concerns. We just want to set a clear expectation if there's a misunderstanding about what the role of the Board of Selectmen is in this kind of matter. So having said that, John, anything you'd care to add?
No, I think you covered it. Really, it's about just jurisdiction and lanes, and this matter is appropriately before the planning board. The only thing I would add, I guess, is that through the process, you mentioned the property owners have certain rights, the budding neighbors have certain rights, and all that is laid out in statute and in our bylaws. So it's up to the planning board to work through that process and to weigh those pieces. And then ultimately, although I don't want to forecast this, but ultimately, if a party is aggrieved by the decision of the planning board, there are rights of appeal. So there is a process. So for all of this, but it's not before the Board of Selectmen, as you know, it is before the planning board.
Right. Thank you, John. Next item of business under new business is appointment of a Board of Selectmen member to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. As we discussed at our last meeting, the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is formed. It has representation for certain constituencies, and among those is a member of the Board of Selectmen. So we would be looking for someone to volunteer. We can do this as a process, a formal process with a motion and a second. Considering that, yes, Tim?
I'll volunteer.
Tim, unsurprisingly, having been the leader of this initiative, is volunteering to be the board's representative on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Any other comment or questions or suggestions from board members? Leslie?
I would like to thank Tim for volunteering, because I think that he has some background. He does certain work on this in his own career. And I think he put together the proposal and so forth, and has worked with different individuals already. And I think he'd be a great candidate for that position.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. I'll echo those sentiments, Tim. I certainly appreciate the effort you've put into to kind of lead this part and willingness to serve as the board's representative on the committee and conduct it forward. So thank you. If there's no other comments, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to appoint Selectman Kalin as the board's representative on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
Second.
Moved by Julianne, seconded by Leslie. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye, unanimous. Tim, congratulations. And we look forward to many good things over the next year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Next item of discussion, next item is the discussion regarding the establishment of a master plan implementation committee. Do we still have Kathy Jubert on? I don't think we do. So
Kathy is still on, Mr. Chair.
oh, she is. I'm sorry. Yes, Kathy, I would. I'll bring you into the meeting again. Hello, Kathy.
Unless she's there in spirit only, but
Kathy, you're muted if you're speaking. Yeah. Can you hear us, Kathy? I'm sorry,
I'm
Kathy.
here.
We can. Oh, there you are. Got it.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
I'm still having problems with Microsoft, so I apologize for having to do this through my phone.
Yep, no problem. Appreciate your perseverance.
I'll just briefly go over the memo that I sent out to the Board of Selectmen and to the town administrator. And we also have on tonight, I believe that Fran Baxter and Rick Leaf are still in the audience. And if you have any questions of them also, they served as the chair and the co-chair of the Master Plan Steering Committee.
Yeah, I'll bring them into to the meeting here.
Okay.
So Fran and Rick.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
I'm here.
Yep. Go ahead. Proceed, Kathy.
So very, very briefly, I just wanted to, like I said, go over the sort of the high points of the memo that I sent out. And this is stemming obviously from the creation and acceptance of the master plan. The planning board accepted the master plan this past spring or late winter, early spring. And the next step in the master plan is in chapter 9 of the master plan is an implementation process that's outlined. And the recommendation of the master plan and the master plan steering committee is, again, the next step would be the creation of the implementation committee. And I'll quote just right out of the master plan where it talks about the next step will be for the Board of Selectmen to establish a master plan implementation committee. The committee will be responsible for assisting the town in implementing the recommendations in the plan and reporting on the progress of the plan implementation. So actually this was just before COVID, myself, the town administrator, and again, the chair and co-chair, Rick and Fran, we got together to discuss, next steps and the makeup and the creation of the implementation committee. And what we are proposing to the board tonight is that we create, or that the Board of Selectmen creates a 13-member implementation committee. And at first, I'm sure some people's reaction is that 13 seems very a large committee, but the master plan steering committee actually was 15 members, and it worked very well. Actually, it was just a great exchange of ideas, a real cross section of the community, and we recommend bringing that forth into the implementation committee also. We think that there should be, just as there was on the steering committee, that there should be some representation from, standing boards today, and that there also be residents at large with, particular expertise, so that, people aren't starting exactly from scratch on the implementation of the committee. But we are proposing that there be one member of the Board of Selectmen, one member of the Financial Planning Committee, 2 planning board members, 1 member from the Historic District Commission, 1 member from the Recreation Commission, 1 member from the Open Space Committee, and 1 member from the Council on Aging, in addition to 5 residents at large. And we foresee that, or we anticipate that what the committee would be doing is, first familiarizing themselves with the master plan implementation chapter in particular. And in that chapter, there's a wonderfully done matrix as far as each goal in the master plan, and then each recommendation, and then it's further broken down into, who are the stakeholders, who should be supporting those stakeholders. And again, stakeholders in the support are a combination of boards in town and also the various departments. And then we also provided in the matrix the cost estimate. We had 3 ranges, obviously, high to low. And then we also talked about the priority. And a lot of discussion went into, each one of those elements in that implementation plan. And we also think, though, that the implementation committee, as time moves forward, that, given the circumstances, of the economy at the time, different priorities in the community, certainly, the impact of something like COVID, that didn't figure into anyone's planning, but that, that implementation plan is not necessarily, cast in stone. We certainly anticipate that it would be followed, but also realize that, that there's a margin in there that we have to be adaptable to the environment, and the economy and any other issues that are happening in town. So that's another thing that we anticipate the implementation committee, would be taking into consideration. So I don't know if Fran or Rick have anything more specific to add, but again, that's what our ask is tonight, is for the Board of Selectmen, to consider moving the master plan along and moving forward into the implementation phase.
Great. Thank you very much, Kathy. Fran Backstrand, Chair of the Master Plan Steering Committee, do you have any comments you'd like to offer?
Well, I am just in support of what Kathy just said. I think that this is, the next step. It's welcomed. I think the makeup of the board is a good one. I did the math. I came up with 14 with the Council on Aging, but it might be me. It did work really well. The 15 people that represented different boards, committees, and commissions came there with their perspective and their experience, so it was very helpful. So I do think when you go to the citizens at large, that they bring something other than just interest in volunteering, because it's a heavy lift. It's not going to be an easy lift, so you have to really be committed, and you have to be looking at this as how this is going to be a positive impact on the town, not a way or a means to say no to something. And so we really want to make sure that we have positive energy on the committee, whatever it is. And I do, though, question the 3-year terms, if there's a way to stagger them so that you don't all of a sudden lose everyone at once.
Yes, that's a good point. That's typical of committee appointments, that we stagger the terms so that you have a gradual turnover. So that's certainly something that we would have to apply here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
That it would be staggered terms, obviously.
Yeah. And Vice Chair, Master Plan Steering Committee, Rick Leaf, do you have any comments you want to offer?
I guess, once again, I concur with Fran and Kathy have said. I think the board should realize that it's not going to be the job of the implementation committee to manage this project as much as to provide impetus to have things going. Ultimately, a lot of the things in the master plan are going to need to be done either by, members of the town staff or by contractors who are going to be hired to do work. I think having the financial planning committee member on the committee makes a lot of sense, because I think as a lot of the other capital spending in the town is projected going forward and put on the 5-year capital plan, I think we could see the implementation committee working with the different department heads and the boards to see what made sense, getting some cost estimates and getting some things onto that 5-year future capital plan also, so they'd come up for constant review between the Board of Selectmen, the Appropriations Committee, and the Financial Planning Committee. So I think the thing that the board should keep in mind is that the committee will sort of be continually asking questions and trying to move things forward, but ultimately the actual accomplishing of the tasks in the plan will fall to either members of the town staff or will fall to consultants or contractors the town will hire to do the work. Certainly the committee will keep track of that and will provide reporting, back to the board on what's happening. But it's not going to be the committee's job to actually do any of this stuff. It's just going to be a committee whose job is going to be to kind of keep track of it and make sure that things are happening over time. But once again, working through the boards and working through John and his staff.
Thank you, Rick. As the selectmen's representative on the master plan steering committee, I can agree that I think that process worked very well with the representation we had on there. It was, by and large, representation from people who had experience in different areas. This committee, as Rick said, there's a likelihood that some amount of work will have to be conducted through town staff. Some of it will have to be conducted through consultants to do various studies or things of that nature. That said, it's not a light effort on the part of the committee members. Certainly, there's a lot of information to sift through, and part of the challenge will be for those committee members to kind of, whittle down the initial objectives and initiatives that we'll want to bring forward and start making progress on. So I don't want, I certainly understand Rick's comments, but I don't want someone to take away from that you can join the committee and be a passenger, just, for entertainment purposes. There is certainly going to be work involved on the part of the committee members, and the time commitment might be very significant because in order to make progress on some of these things, it will require a fair amount of meeting time to go through the information and make some decisions. So thank you for that presentation and information. To reiterate, I'll just repeat, the composition of the committee is proposed to be a member of the Board of Selectmen, member of the Financial Planning Committee, 2 members of the Planning Board, member of the Historic District Commission, member of the Recreation Commission, member of the Open Space Committee, member of the Council on Aging, and then 5 residents at large from the community, preferably with some kind of experience in planning, economic development, things of that nature. Certainly is beneficial for that expertise to be brought to this committee. I'd also like to just comment too, over time, in these last 6 months, there have been concerns expressed by some committee members, perhaps in part motivated by the COVID environment and the difficulties that local businesses are having about establishing an economic development committee. The board has not proceeded to do that because that is one item that has been identified in the master plan as something that might be brought forward for consideration. And we feel it was the kind of the purview of that committee, that follow-on effort after following the adoption of the master plan, to have that be an outcome of whatever these upcoming decisions and recommendations would be. So that's certainly, considering that the downtown area was a large focus of the master plan discussions and public input, we certainly anticipate that will be a lively topic for the implementation committee to grapple with. So Are there any comments or questions from members of the board? Tim?
Hi, just wondering why there are 2 planning board seats and everybody else only has 1. It seems there are other committees or boards in town that would be helpful or beneficial to have a different perspective from them on the board, or even have another resident. I don't understand why we need 2 people from the planning board on this committee.
Kathy, would you care to comment?
Sure. When the planning board was reviewing the master plan after the completion of the steering committee's work, and discussing the eventual vote that they took to accept the master plan, that was one of the items raised by the planning board, was could it be considered for that board to have 2 representatives on the implementation committee? So given that I work with the planning board, along with many other boards, but that I just personally took that into consideration and suggested that there be 2 planning board reps. I certainly understand, Mr. Kalin, about other boards being represented. We had a lot of discussion back in January, February, with Rick and Fran and John, about which committees would want to participate versus which committees we thought should be on the the implementation committee. So that's why there's 2. It suggested that there's 2 planning board members.
Thank you, Kathy.
So with,
I'm sorry, Tim, you had to follow up?
No, go ahead.
Okay, Leslie?
I'm still not hearing a rationale for that. That was my question exactly. There may have been a request to do that, but I do feel that maybe this could be spread out a little bit more. We do have a lot of stakeholders in this community, and I feel like there's probably another 1 at least that we could add to this list, so that there is 1 representative from another board, committee, or commission. That stuck out to me. I don't understand quite. There may have been a request, but I don't understand the rationale for it.
Julianne.
So the two members on planning board make sense to me, because as we've seen at town meeting, the planning board understands best, I think, how the town requires zoning and other bylaws to make sure that all of these things are implemented. And so they're kind of key members on this committee. But I'd like to add something else. If the number is a concern, and I think Kathy said that the master plan steering committee had 15 people, I would love to see 15 people on this committee as well, and also add in a member of the disabled community. We've
Go ahead, Julian.
no, I'm done.
Okay, I understand the request, and I think it's difficult when we try to start earmarking at too fine-grained a level any particular expertise. I think what we're trying to do is find, among the citizen volunteers at least, from the group of applicants, the people we think are have the best qualifications to serve on the committee in its broadest aspects. That's not to say any particular concern or consideration is unimportant. It's just that I don't feel among the citizen representatives that that it's advisable to, as I said, earmark or designate specific slots among those positions for specific representation. Scott?
Yeah, I was going to question more if there was if we were to broaden it from Kathy or Fran or Rick's perspective, what what came up as the next board or committee that you'd want to see in this on this committee represented?
That's back to Julianne.
No, I'm sorry. Back to Kathy and Rick and Fran.
Oh.
If you had additional slots, who was next in terms of wanting to see representation from other boards and committees in town?
Yeah, Kathy.
Sure. Well, we had discussed whether we should have someone from the Conservation Commission, but then felt that open space is a subcommittee, basically, of the Conservation Commission, as is the Trails Committee. So there's a lot of crossover between the Conservation Commission, the Open Space Committee, and the Trails. So we picked the Open Space Committee, and which is made up of, again, representatives from other boards and some at-large members. So we thought open space was a good compromise there, but we certainly did discuss, the Conservation Commission. We discussed the Zoning Board of Appeals, who obviously is also, involved with the land use, decision-making for the town. Those are two of the boards I remember we talked about.
Fran, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I mean, just to answer to Scott's, I think that a large percentage of the master plan is about land use and development, but it's not the entire document. So that could be why the planning board members themselves felt that it was important to have more than one, because it is a larger portion. That being said, it is not a land use document, so therefore you could reduce that to one. But I would recommend it go to a citizen at large, somebody with architecture or development or some type of expertise that they could bring outside as another citizen at large, but keep it at 13.
Yeah, that was going to be my final follow-up then. I also would think that a single member of the planning board could represent their interests and be able to communicate with the rest of the planning board. And so having an opportunity to broaden the representation either through another board and committee or a citizen, I like Fran's idea of bumping that up to 6 and then maintaining the current count.
John, did you have a comment you want to add?
I was just going to state, years ago, I worked in another town and we had a capital planning committee and there was a member of the library board of trustees on there and we could never get that person to attend. And I said, why is there a member of the library trustees dedicated to the capital planning? And the comment was, well, they wanted a building project at the time at which the committee was formed. So we had somebody who was really interested at the time, but now they're not interested at all because their building project is long since done and people serve on the trustees, the library trustees, they don't want to serve on a capital planning committee. So when we talked about this, that's why we pushed, the key committees that should have representation are here. And the thought was the at-large residents allowed the flexibility to appoint people with not only just an expertise, but also an interest in serving, because as was mentioned many times, this can be some heavy lifting. And so it's going to take folks that want to be on here and not just, they have to serve on here because they have to send somebody from their committee. And, you may not have folks that want to serve. So the thought process here was the key boards and committees that are represented are here clearly for a reason. And then the citizens at large give the flexibility to get people with not only the expertise, but the interest in serving. So that was a thought process that we discussed. So,
and I'll just offer the comment that having served on the Mass Plan Steering Committee, where we also on that committee had 2 members of the planning board, I can't say I found it to be overrepresentation in a sense. Quite a lot of the topics, content, or whatever really does fall within the purview of land use and zoning, or closely related to that. And to have two people from that board, I think it, you know, at the least, if one person isn't available to attend the meeting, you still have representation from that committee to provide that continuity. So I understand the concerns that people are expressing about that. Based on my experience on Master Plan Steering Committee, I don't find it to be a problem really myself, my own personal opinion. Tim?
Wouldn't it make more sense to have somebody from the ZBA? I mean, I'm just different perspective on things. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me to have two people from the planning board. I mean, you can make the same case that if somebody from the Board of Selectmen misses a meeting, then you lose your perspective on the Board of Selectmen. So shouldn't the Board of Selectmen have two people then by that same rationale? I mean, you can use that same rationale for everyone.
I agree. I mean, everyone, arguably, you could say that. I think in particular, because much of the master plan does concern various aspects of zoning or zoning related information, that it's that proportion, I think, that leads me to say that. Leslie, you have a comment?
Can I just add one other thing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tim. Yes.
Just to push back on that, my understanding is the implementation committee doesn't get down into the details of actually making planning board decisions. Like, these things will still go before the full planning board or the full Board of Selectmen or the full finance committee. Yes. And they will get down into the details to make the decision. So, like, we don't need multiple layers of planning board expertise on the implementation committee, because we get that when whatever's recommended goes before the planning board. Like, to me, it's much more important to have as vast an array of perspective on things as we can get. And I agree with everybody that expanding beyond 13 doesn't make sense. Like, 13's, that's a good number of people. Like that's a lot bigger than I would have thought it would have been. But that's, to get that many people on board with something that's quite an effort in itself. So it's just, if you could have 13 people, take advantage of that. And to Julianne's comment about, you know, disabled people and elderly people and people from different backgrounds, different income levels throughout town, like, maybe we don't have a ZBA person, maybe we have a resident, so we get a different perspective on things. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me to have two people from one board on this committee.
Thank you, Tim. Leslie?
Yeah, I agree with Tim. I don't understand why one particular group would be more represented than anybody else. I think this is an opportunity to get another person involved, whether it's a citizen at large or another committee or commission. I give people a little bit more credit than that if there is a question that comes up, we can find the answer. There are resources available. I think that the work can be properly done. We have a lot of wonderful people in this town, a lot of intelligent individuals. And I feel that it's important to spread it out and that no one group be more represented than anyone else. I've also been on a lot of committees over the years, and from my experience, 15 is unwieldy. So my recommendation would be to not go above 13 and to bring everybody to a one member, and then add either another committee or commission or another resident.
Okay, any other comments or suggestions from board members? Julianne?
So with the two planning board members, doesn't design review report to planning board? I believe it does, correct?
Yeah, that's
they're an advisory
committee
board.
appointment. Yeah.
And a lot of so I'm just looking at like goal 3 of the master plan. Perform periodic review of existing design guidelines to ensure balance between existing community character. Perform periodic review of the town-wide guidelines for commercial and industrial development. A lot of it is land use and how it's used, and I don't see the problem with having 2 planning board members. And I would also like to address the other issue of staggering the membership. That's something that could maybe be done within the group as they, kind of know where their members are in their committees and how much longer they are serving there. So
Well,
that part
I think each of the boards and committees that are represented here will appoint their representative. So I don't think that's the concern about 3-year terms or anything like that. I think that will just emerge naturally out of those boards individually taking consideration of their members and choosing who they want to represent them on the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So the staggered terms really applies to the citizen participants, the 5, where you don't want all of them expiring terms at the same time. You want to stagger those so that you have continuity of representation among them.
So do we have to make a recommendation on that, or will they decide that amongst themselves?
I think we would put it into the charge of the committee to some extent here. John, would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, whenever this happens, you might have 2 openings on a board or committee for your appointment. One is filling in on expired term and the other is a full term. The board makes a decision who to put in which spot. I mean, it's pretty standard.
But as far as like the 5 citizen members for the implementation committee, we would probably designate 2 of those to be 3-year terms, 2 of those to be 2-year terms, and 1 to be a single-year term, just to provide
to mix them up.
The initial setting. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. And I just want to repeat what Kathy said, that the 15-member steering committee worked well, and I would love to see it as a 15-member group. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Julianne. I guess I don't have a strong feeling about the number, but at the same time, I guess I would be hard pressed to explain how 15 is better than 13 and why 17 isn't better than 15 and why 11 isn't better than 13. So I think there's certainly a kind of a critical mass you need in terms of representations across some of the town boards. And we'd like to provide a sufficient number of kind of at-large positions for interested citizens to fill. I think we're striking a pretty good balance here. I certainly could see this as, being viable as a 13-member board. Any other comments, Leslie?
Yeah, I'm not ready to vote on this makeup of this committee.
Okay.
I feel strongly about there being an even number of members from each of the groups listed here and bringing everybody to 1 and maybe adding a resident at large, for example, and looking for people who have interests in different areas, such as architecture, like someone had said here, that kind of thing. We have a lot of strengths in this community that would be a wonderful asset to a committee like this.
Okay, Scott? Roger?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable moving forward tonight with a single member from the planning board and a 6th resident.
Okay. Tim, what's your leaning at the moment about proceeding tonight? We have had some interest in getting this up and running, getting it moving, getting the implementation committee going and beginning to, work with some of this stuff. What's your feeling, Tim, about acting tonight versus delaying?
I think we should vote tonight. I'd support 1 planning board member and 1 additional resident.
Julianne?
Well, my suggestion is, why don't we postpone it and have planning board help us with figuring this out?
And I was prepared to act tonight with whatever changes to the composition of the committee was made. I'm sorry, Leslie, I think you had a hand up again.
Yeah, I'd be prepared to make an amended motion.
Okay, I don't think we have yet an initial motion, do we?
No.
Okay. For purposes of further discussion, Leslie, would you like to offer a motion?
Can I make it with my recommendation in it?
Well, we don't have any motion at all before us. We have a draft motion which reflected what was being presented tonight, but you're certainly entitled to make any motion you like. So if you'd like to make a motion as you see fit, then please proceed.
Okay. I move the board vote to establish a master plan implementation committee as recommended by the master plan steering committee to include representation from the following boards, committees, and commissions, in addition to 5 residents at large, each for a 3-year term. Board of Selectmen, 1. Financial Planning Committee, 1. Planning Board, 1. Historic District Commission, 1. Parks and Recreation Commission, 1. Open Space Committee, 1. Council on Aging, 1. 6 residents at large with expertise in planning, architecture, economic development, landscape architecture, real estate, or other relevant fields.
Second.
Then
We have
just
a
a point of
motion.
clarification.
Yes. Go
It
ahead,
just
Scott.
in that first sentence, Leslie said 5 when it would have been 6.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
I see. Yes.
That's all.
Okay. Corrected. 1 member
Second.
from each of the indicated committees and 6 residents for a total of 13. That's what's being proposed, right?
Yes.
And that was moved by Leslie, seconded by Tim. So for purposes of discussion, I would ask about the preferences of the board. If we were going to reduce the planning board from 2 members to 1, what is your sentiment of like, say, a ZBA member who certainly does have knowledge and expertise in the zoning bylaws, in contrast to, say, a 6th citizen resident? I'm just asking the question. If we're going to reduce the planning board, how do you want to fill that spot to restore the count to 13? And my suggestion is to consider ZBA as opposed to a 6th resident of undesignated form. Tim?
If a member of the ZBA were to put in an application as a resident, could they just be considered as a resident? Like they're just because they're on the ZBA doesn't preclude them from being on this committee.
Right. I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I apologize if I missed this. Who's going to be appointing the residents? Is it the Board of Selectmen going to be appointing the
Board of Selectmen will again do an interview process, and from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So even if we don't have a specific seat for the ZBA, if a member of the ZBA wanted to put in an application as a resident to fill one of the 6 residential seats, they could be considered for a seat on this committee.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So that's fine. Yeah.
So I'm comfortable with having 6 resident seats then.
Okay. Any other comments by board members? Hearing none. We have a motion to establish Master Plan Implementation Committee as recommended by the Master Plan Steering Committee to include representation from the following boards, committees, and commissions, in addition to 6 residents at large, each for a 3-year term. Board of Selectmen, 1. Financial Planning, 1. Planning Board, 1. Historic District Commission, 1. Parks and Recreation Commission, 1. Open Space Committee, 1. Council on Aging, 1. And 6 residents at large with expertise in planning, architecture, economic development, landscape architecture, real estate, or other relevant fields. That is the motion, moved by Leslie, seconded by Tim Kalen. This is a roll call vote. So Scott,
Aye.
Julianne,
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm voting no, just based on I wanted to see 15 people.
okay, thank you, Julianne.
You're welcome.
Leslie,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and I will vote aye as well. So that carries 4 in favor, 1 opposed for the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And we will proceed, I suppose, with posting applications or advertising the openings and begin taking applications and conducting interviews for the 6 at-large slots on the Implementation Committee. Fran, any final comments?
No, it was a pleasure, everyone.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Fran. Yep. Rick, any final comments?
No, thank you for your consideration. I think good decisions were made, and you can expect that once this implementation committee has been put in place, a lot of ideas are going to start to get generated. It's just a question of putting them in order of how we want to do them, figuring out how much they're going to cost, and then get to work and get some stuff done, which will be a lot of fun. So once again, thank you for getting this going.
Okay, Rick, thank you very much. And Kathy Jubert, Town Planner, any?
Yeah, I'm very excited to move on to the next stage of this. So we'll
Great.
I'll work with John and we'll get the information out as far as advertising for residents.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. And the next item of business is budget update. Town Administrator John Quidere and Finance Director Jason Little.
So why don't I start by kind of giving a little bit of a big picture. So included in your packet is a very detailed memo from Finance Director Jason Little for your review. I also included an article from the State House News, which I believe was from Thursday, and it's titled "Governor Baker Rips Washington Polls Over Virus Aid." And essentially, the governor is expressing his frustration, as you've heard me express multiple times, with regard to what's happening with the coronavirus relief aid. But it was interesting because the governor is commenting really in the article on 3 budgets, as I'm always commenting. There's fiscal 20 that we just ended and closed out on June 30th. Then there's fiscal 21, which we just started, and we haven't even set the tax rate for yet. That'll take place in November. And then there's fiscal 2022, which is the fiscal year that we are now just beginning the planning stages for, that will start July 1st of next year. And the governor's comment, his quotes are, quote, long story short, the FY20 budget is going to be fine. Generally speaking, we think fiscal 2021, we think we're going to work our way through, but fiscal 2022, we believe, is going to be important for the feds to support states and municipalities. You've heard me say very similar sentiment, that we were going to close out fiscal 20 okay, not great, but okay. We're going to get by in 2021. We have a balanced budget as of right now that assumes significant cuts in state aid, which is not clear they're going to materialize or not. And our concern, or my concern largely, is issue of 2022, because the problem is we don't know where fiscal 21 is at this point in time. And so it's hard when you don't have data points. You're just closing out fiscal 20. You really don't have a set fiscal 21 budget in terms of setting the tax rate and knowing exactly where you stand to try to start to build and plan for fiscal 2022. So the memo that you have in your packet on top of this article that I provided is from the town, from the finance director. And so it's focused primarily on the close of fiscal 20 and where we stand at this point. And I'm not going to steal Jason's thunder. I'll let him hit the high points. But the bottom line is we closed out fiscal 20. Well, we're closing out fiscal 20. We don't have certified free cash. These are preliminary numbers. They're still in motion. Things can still change. But essentially, our revenues came in just right on target, very little to any surplus. And our expenditures, our appropriation returned about $1 million. In terms of free cash and how that fits into the overall context of what types of budget surpluses do we typically see at the end of the fiscal year, this is a very, very low end. The only reason why we're in good shape at the close of fiscal 20 is because we didn't spend all of our free cash from last year. So without getting into the details, I'm going to shift it over to Jason. Jason's going to kind of give you the lowdown of how it looks like we're closing out fiscal 20 and what that means for us kind of moving forward. So with that, through the chair, I turn it over to Jason.
Jason, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John. Let me start by saying, we built a suspense. Our free cash is going to be around $1.9 million, where we had previously closed out the prior year with $2.85 million. So, like John said, some numbers can still change. I wouldn't be a town accountant if I didn't disclose that the books aren't closed. We're still working feverishly on some tasks that are going to end up being fairly inconsequential. So they're big tasks for me to do, but they're not really going to change these numbers. So there are some things that are going to increase the 1.9 million. There's going to be some things that decrease the 1.9 million, but overall, those are not going to be significant enough that I'm confident with the estimate of $1.9 million. So anyway, how did we get from 2.8 million to 1.9? That's basically a drop of about $1 million. Basically, revenues above budget, which John mentioned. Our revenues above budget were about $86,000 this year. You can't be any statistically closer to budget than that. That's on a percentage basis, I think it's 0.13%. So we really want to be between there and 2%. So that's really on the lowest end that we possibly would want to be. Most of the, from this year's performance, we closed out about $1.4 million in appropriations. This means this is money that was in FY20 budgets that wasn't spent. So that's in addition to the free cash that we didn't spend from the prior year. So from $2.8 million at this year's town meeting in July, we spent $1.965 million. So again, we add 1.47, which is 86,000 plus the $1.4 million from the expenditure closeouts from the current year's performance, less what we spent. And then there's one other calculation to the free cash calculation, which is the increase in the town's overlay balance, which is the amount that's set aside to provide for abatements that people apply for. So that was an increase of $458,000. So all told, that's a decrease of $952,000. So that's where we come up with the $1.9 million. So I'll continue boring you for one more minute. I'll get into a little bit more of the details. The $86,000, that is amounted to from taxes. I mean, it's a budget of $63.6 million, and taxes is the property taxes is the largest share of that, and we collected about $58,000 above budget. Our state aid, we are still waiting for one last piece. That's one of the items I'm waiting for. We're under budget by $22,000, so we're expecting another payment to come in. So that's why I've kept the books open for a little while to accrue that money into FY20, so we don't have a negative in state aid. But that's only $22,000, so it's a swing of about $20,000. Local receipts in total, the biggest one is excise taxes. Our budget for excise taxes was $3 million. We achieved that and performed above that by about $10,000. So not really a banner year for excise taxes, but we did make our budget number. And that's amounted to an $86,000 return to fund balance. On the expenditure side, I'll just go through this briefly. The largest source of expenditure closeouts of the $1.4 million was general government, and within that general government category is the reserve fund, the Appropriations Committee reserve fund, which was not tapped in any way during FY20. So that closes out $175,000. Other significant amounts, public works, we closed out $160,000 from public works, and the majority of that was unused snow and ice money because we had a relatively light winter. So that was over $100,000 in snow and ice. And then lastly, employee benefits, our health insurance budget that did close out. We did have a migration factor, which is money that we budget for people transitioning to the town's health plan during the year, and that did not come to be. So we had a positive performance within employee benefits. So all told, that returned $1.4 million in appropriations closeouts. So on a percentage basis, that is 2.15%. Again, within what we shoot for. And it's important to note, we legally cannot spend beyond these budgets, I mean, under Mass General Law. So there's always going to be a positive result within the expenditures unless something tragically wrong happens. And, you know, I don't think we can be any closer than this 2%. And speaking of excise taxes, that's the largest piece. I know somebody had asked me about our performance within excise taxes this year, and I did provide you a drill down into some of those numbers. And these are going to be important to understand these numbers coming into the next year, because we have a local option meals tax, which is another 0.75% added on to the meals tax, which we collect quarterly. There was a lot of suspense leading up to our fourth quarter payment because of the outbreak of the coronavirus and the overall shutdown in the economy. And, you know, typically we get about $90,000 a quarter, and our fourth quarter payment was about half that. And if anybody's been paying attention to the news, I know the state has just recently announced that these revenues are going to be delayed, that the restaurants and facilities are still collecting this money, but they're going to postpone collecting it from the facilities, which means that we aren't going to be collecting it. So again, it's a little bit of a question mark. When we built the FY21 budget, though, we did take that into account, and we did plan for a drastic drop in these numbers. And that's about it with what I prepared in the memo. If anybody has any questions, I can try to answer them.
Muted myself, dog was barking. You mentioned under expenditures, the employee benefits, and I see that was actually in a favorable direction by like $423,000. So that's not an insignificant amount there. And that was because we had fewer than anticipated people transitioning onto our health plan. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Jason, just to kind of put it in perspective, Mr. Chairman, Jason, not Jason Little.
Yes.
Just to put it in perspective, you know, we've got almost 400 employees, and 10 people moving on to health insurance is about $160,000, $170,000. So the numbers move quickly with very little migration, and so you have to have sufficient funds to cover that. So again, the good news is if it performs favorably, then you're in good shape. When sometimes it goes the other way, you're white knuckling it a little bit to the end. So overall, the appropriation side of things is exactly where we want to be, within 2%. on the revenue side, as the finance director said, $85,000 or $86,000 to the positive, that is impossible to replicate. And that kind of number is scary when you're looking at your year-end numbers. So you can never be that close to your revenues by design. So I don't want anybody to think that that's some great thing. That's a terrifying thing to get that close. You've heard our auditors say year after year, you want to be, 1 or 2% on your revenues, 1 or 2% on your expenditures. One of the things we did is we tried to push our expenditure returns, not knowing how bad the revenue slump was going to be. We started to, we didn't go so far as to freeze budgets, but we certainly spoke to departments and said, if you don't need to spend that money, we'd like you to hold on to it and return it unless you absolutely have to spend it. And, a good example there is cooperation with the school department. They returned almost, approximately $79,000. They typically will encumber and spend everything. But working with the superintendent, we said, look, we need to make sure that we finish to the positive. Now, the implications for these numbers are significant because, we fund most of our capital improvement plan through our free cash. So, $500,000 goes in the operating budget, $175,000 of this goes towards the appropriation committee's reserve minimally. So, you start looking at this, we're not going to have a lot for capital improvement. And the only reason why we finished the year out with 1.9 million again is because we left $888,000 on the table from the prior year, knowing things were going to be tight. So this is going to be a trend for the next couple of years. Budgets are going to get tight, surpluses are going to get tight. So how do we proceed with our capital? Do we postpone or restructure some of these projects? Some of that will happen. The other thing is, the opportunity, you always have the option to finance some of your capital plans, some of your capital items if you can't pay cash for them. Paying cash is an ideal situation. And we've lived in that ideal situation since fiscal 12. We're clearly not in an ideal situation right now. So all of this stuff will be reviewed during the upcoming budget process. But just the takeaway from this is things are getting tighter, and they're going to get tighter when we look at fiscal 2022 to the point where 2022, the state's worried, I'm worried. If the state aid gets more difficult in fiscal 2022, and we don't see our local receipts holding, and if we have anything negative in terms of our health insurance renewal, we're going to have a very, very, very difficult fiscal 2022. And I know people tend to focus on various issues, especially when they're sitting home with coronavirus, containment here. The upcoming budget for fiscal 2022 has the possibility to have some very significant implications for our level of service delivery. And so people need to be aware, and that's what these numbers are telling us right now. 2022 is going to be an extremely difficult year. We'll have a better sense of where we are if the state can't even set their fiscal 21. Again, in the article that I provided to you, the state is still pitching provisional budgets through the end of October. They were hoping the federal government was going to make some decisions about coronavirus relief funds, so that then they can finalize their fiscal 21 budget. They haven't even finalized their fiscal 21 budget. We're beginning, the municipalities, Northborough, our fiscal 2022 planning, and the state is nowhere near being able to tell us what we might possibly expect for fiscal 2022. So information is going to come very late in this upcoming cycle. And so we're going to need to plan very conservatively moving forward. So I know it's a lot of numbers, a lot of information. It's pretty much what we told you to expect. Again, we keep you up to date with where we're tracking in terms of the closing, the fiscal year we're closing. Where we are in fiscal 2021 right now. And we really we have very, very limited information upon which to plan for fiscal 2022. Just so you know, the instructions for the departments at the last department head meeting was to bring forward budgets that are level service budgets containing the minimum increases necessary to support the level service budget. And we'll have that information. And then as we get more information about revenues, including state aid, we'll have some more in-depth conversations.
Thank you very much, John. Jason Little, Finance Director, thank you very much for this detail here. It is interesting for me to look at this and see where some of these highlighted line items, fall and see what the impact of that is on these, both on the revenue side and expenditure side, to see how close we really did cut it or are cutting it this year. We've had the luxury of having very sound financial management over the last, decade roughly, and in particular our free cash policy to fund a lot of our capital projects and everything. We're now seeing the downside of that, where that free cash isn't going to materialize in the same amounts it has been in past years, and we're going to have to rethink some of our capital spending to adapt to that. So, and that's not even taking into account the operational spending side. So.
The upside, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is that the way we do it gave us that flexibility where other towns were up against it immediately in fiscal 21 and we weren't. That's why. So It's by design. It's not a bad thing. It's about dealing with difficult information or unpleasant information, but we have always dealt with it and we will continue to deal with it. But the information is unpleasant. But it is what it is.
Right. Great. Thank you very much. Which brings us to execution of cemetery deed 1102. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to execute cemetery deed 1102.
Second.
Moved by Scott Rogers, seconded by Leslie Rattan. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Carries unanimously. Any other business to come before the board?
Just a need for a brief executive session regarding collective bargaining, specifically patrol officers union grievance discussion.
Okay, item on the agenda, executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection 3, collective bargaining, patrol officers union, contract execution, and level 3 grievance. Due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding these matters in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the board. Do I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Yes, Tim.
I move the board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Subsection 3, collective bargaining, RE patrol officers union, contract execution, and level 3 grievance. Due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding these matters in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the board.
Second.
Moved by Tim Kalin, seconded by Leslie. This is a roll call vote. Scott Rogers?
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch?
Aye.
Leslie Rattan?
Aye.
Tim Kalin?
Aye.
And I, Jason Perot, also vote aye. The board will enter into executive session through a separate Zoom meeting. Open session is concluded. No further business will be conducted in open session.
I'd ask the members of the board to hang on just a minute, please. I'm trying to get the other meeting started. Just give me a second.
Sure.